and take a look at these two guys. I'm not going to get real deep into the specs. I think we've covered these guns quite a bit, especially the P365 over time, but I think it's really helpful to stack these guys up against each other just to give you an appreciation of either how small the P365 is or how big the Taurus is in comparison. I mean, really, there's a significant difference between the two, and some people are probably saying you can't compare these two, they're way too different. Well, I disagree. First, they're both guns, but I consider them both, again, kind of in that subcompact category. Now, one of the biggest differences between these two is in terms of weight. Now, the weight on the Taurus is 21.15 ounces versus 17.8 ounces on the SIG, and we'll talk a little bit about what that means to the shooter. But let's go ahead and take a look at some features here. In terms of grip and ergonomics, the Taurus actually is really cool. I very much enjoy the way they've put this together. Now you'll see these grip textures right here. I'll try and get pretty close to them. And this is reminiscent to me of maybe a Smith & Wesson M&P 2.0, although just a little bit more subdued than that. So I think they really met a good compromise between really grippy texture and not so much that it's going to rip you apart or anything like that. Not saying that the Smith & Wesson does, but they're pretty aggressive for sure. And they smartly left the texture off of the bottom of the frame here, which is nice. I find, especially with maybe my Shield or 2.0C, that if I'm going to feel the grip texture, it's going to be right here. So I like this. It's very comfortable. It's very nice. Now, they did not put a recess or anything to clear any malfunctions or anything like that. But at the price point for this, and I got this around $250 out the door, there are some features I'm just not going to expect on it, and that's okay. And anything that does come with it, I'm going to be impressed with. Now, in terms of magazines, it does come with two 12-round steel magazines like this. I mean, pretty basic construction, yellow follower, and they do a great job. And they've got a little bit of a pinky extension there to really make sure you get a nice grip on this. So just to give you kind of an idea, it really is a full 3-finger grip, and it's extremely comfortable. Now, there are a couple of recesses on both sides of the frames here, which is really nice. And then I love the fact that they put a couple of little reference points right here on the forward end of the frame, and I use it. I mean, it's really nice. It's a great way to know if the gun is moving around a lot when you're shooting, if you're losing your thumb on the frame or anything like that. It's just a really nice reference point. You can also use it for your index finger if you want to keep that finger out of the trigger well until you're ready to use the gun. Now, as far as controls, the magazine release here, it's a pretty small magazine release. There are a couple of grooves on it, which is nice. Now, I was not ever able to determine 100% if this was reversible, and admittedly, I haven't tried, but several people in the last video said that it was, which is great. Now, clearly it's not ambi out of the box, and you're also going to notice that there are no controls here for slide lock, slide release, or even the thumb safety, which it does have, on the right-hand side of the gun. So for left-handed shooters, that might be a consideration for you. But otherwise, the controls are pretty thoughtful. I like everything. I'm not a big fan of the safety personally. I don't use them on striker-fired guns, but I know a lot of people that do. They like them, and that's great that it's there. And then in terms of takedown, it is very similar to a Glock. It does have the takedown levers on both sides. Now, one thing that's unique about this, you actually have to pull the trigger a couple of times, or at least I found that to be the case. And I'll talk more about why that is a little bit later on in the video. But you will notice that the trigger does have the safety lever in it. So if you're wondering about safeties aside from the thumb safety, there you go. And then you'll also notice that it does have an accessory rail for tiny ninjas, lasers, chainsaws, that sort of thing. Now, I don't have anything lying around the house so far that fits on this, but perhaps maybe a Viridian laser or light or something like that might work with it. But overall, I think the ergonomics and the grip texture and everything and the controls, Taurus did a really good job with this. Now, it's kind of a gray frame. It's slightly bitone, but it's hardly noticeable there. But again, I think they did a really good job with this. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the frame features of the P365 for a moment or two. We'll start with the grip. And the grip texture on this is actually very reminiscent to the P320X series line, and I like it a lot. In fact, it can actually be a little bit more aggressive than it is, but it definitely does the job, and they've carried it all the way around front, back, and sides, even the pinky extension on this particular magazine right here. And in terms of magazines, I haven't mentioned it yet, but probably one of the most outstanding features of this gun is the magazine itself. Now, it's 10 rounds in such a small gun. It's quite remarkable, and to my understanding, they actually built the gun around the magazine. But it's quite fascinating to have that basically almost double stack capacity with such a